Hello and welcome back to the Albion Obsessed. I bet you all thought we were gone. Welcome to this live stream to discuss all the things that have been going on with the Albion this week. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a week, to be honest with you. So it's going to be really fun to dissect where the week began and how spectacularly the week has ended. But before we get into any of that, let's see who joins us on this bumper edition of the Albion Obsessed podcast. Joe, you're up first, my friend. Joe, how are you?
Well, it's bloody dusty in here, Tom. Hold on. No, we're good. We're good. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, man, I'm not too bad. You know, it's absolutely fantastic to be back. It feels like it feels like it's been a long time coming. So it's really good to be back with you guys chatting football. Mr. Aaron Stevens, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, man. As I say, it's just actually like a really nice thing to be back talking football. It genuinely feels like a long time, and I'm going to say that quite a few times tonight. But it does. You know, it's been a while, a month or so. So yeah, absolutely fantastic to be back, and thank you very much everyone for joining us on this live edition of Albion Obsessed. As we go through the night, please do leave us your comments. Let us know your thoughts as we chat. Challenge us on anything we say that might be a bit controversial, because there'll be a few bits and pieces, I'm sure, that your opinions may differ. But before we get into any of those malarkeys, Dagan, our stateside correspondent, how are you, brother? It's fantastic to see you, and that looks like a very fine shirt behind you.
It is a very fine Valentin Barco Boca Junior shirt, which I was happy to procure at a quite nice rate of $35, including shipping. Beat that price. I'm fantastic though, both because of that incoming player, because of yesterday's result. There's a lot of talk about whether this is a derby or not between Brighton and Palace. But what I can assure you is that such a rivalry was in place yesterday evening for me, when you guys were sound asleep, perhaps, between the University of North Carolina and Duke in college basketball. And that is sort of the preeminent rivalry in college basketball. I'm a lifelong North Carolina fan. So the perfect nightcap to a perfect day was Carolina leading almost wire to wire over Duke and winning the game. So I'm on cloud nine. Shout out to Rob Morton, fellow Brighton fan who runs Paul's on Oak Island. They have the most incredible mural that depicts a lot of Brighton stuff, as well as Carolina Tar Heel stuff. So he and I have those two fanhoods in common. So I know he's a listener. Shout out to Rob. And yeah, couldn't be more thrilled.
It's excellent. I'm glad you're happy, Dagan. I like happy Dagan. We very rarely see angry Dagan, but he does exist, I assure you, everyone. And we also welcome back Chloe. Chloe, we talk about roller coaster of emotions. As the only person who was at the Luton game in this sort of space, I bet you've been on a bit of a whopper of a week.
Yeah, I said after yesterday, I think this is one of the most roller coastery weeks I've had as a Brighton fan. To go from that game on Tuesday, where it was just, we were just annihilated, really. I've never there's only been sort of a handful of games I've been to where we've just been so dominated and offered so little, and we didn't even have a shot until about the 70th minute. And then we're singing, "We've had a shot," because you have to in those sort of games. It wasn't pleasant. And then yesterday was just the exact opposite, to not just be our sort of arch rivals, but to just completely dominate. And, I've wanted to do that to Palace for ages. We've been quite a bit better than them for quite a while, I think. And it was just nice to finally crash them, really.
Yeah, it certainly was. It certainly was. I'm going to make you all wait a little bit for what you all want, because you all want to talk about us playing Palace off the park. I can see it. But before we do that, Joe, I want to ask you, where was your Albion mojo at midweek? As Chloe says, really disappointing 4-0 loss against Luton, but it's worth mentioning they just took Newcastle to a 4-4 draw. So, fair play to them for that. And then with the transfer window slamming shut and only one player brought in for the first team, a lot of people on social media are very unhappy. It's been a tough week for the Albion faithful. Where was Joe Sayers at on Thursday?
Just want to check.
You've had a couple of days to process the Luton game.
Just want to check on Aaron's welfare. I think he just fell over. Are you okay, Aaron? You good? Cool. He's good. It was on the floor, Tom, to be honest. I think more so the Luton thrashing brought out the frustrations, weirdly, of the really annoying draws we've been having recently against the teams that we should be picking more points up from. And I don't want to be that entitled fan that we should be getting points from teams below us. But you've come to expect more from this team and this squad, in my opinion, over the last year. So that's where my Albion mojo was just slammed onto the floor. And then to have the transfer window end the way it did, obviously with Mo Dahoud leaving and no other midfield option coming in, my frustrations took to a new level. And I made that very clear in the group chat and on Twitter. And rightly or wrongly got crap for it. But as we've said, as our friend Jack Albion says, life is a roller coaster. So yeah, it's just one of those things in football where you just have to ride the lows and the highs will come again. And luckily, they came.
Yeah, and what a way to bounce back. Now, Aaron, Joe mentioned there about Mo Dahoud. It's been a bit of a mad one with Mo. Came in from the summer, a free agent from Germany. Good pedigree. He was thought very highly of. A few injuries held him back earlier on in his career, but he was genuinely sort of compared early on to Gundogan. So quite a lot of high hopes for him when he came to the Albion, but it just didn't work out for him. From what you saw, Aaron, of Mo Dahoud, were you disappointed to see him go, or do you think it was just the thing that needed to be done?
I think the thing that needed to be done, to be honest. I don't think he settled well in England. You could just tell he's played in Germany most of his career, so head back over there, find some form, and go back out there. It's no great loss, I don't think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I think that red card against Sheffield United was probably the final nail in the coffin. I know he started the next Premier League game he was available for, which I think was Burnley, and he came off at half-time. So there was, I had hopes that he might sort of revive his Albion career, but I think when he wasn't even making the bench over youngsters, I think that was pretty much, game over for him. So wish him all the best in his future endeavours. It just wasn't to be at the Albion. But Dagan, let's talk about the young man whose name adorns the shirt behind you, Valentin Barco. The club were very interested in him in the summer. He wanted to stay over in Argentina to finish the cup games that he was playing over there. I know that you, for one, are incredibly excited about the signing of this young talent. Tell the listeners and the viewers, Dagan, why we should be excited about Barco's arrival.
You should be excited because he's exciting. Watching him is an experience unto himself every time he's in the game. Watching him play one of the build-up matches for the Olympic qualifying matches for Argentina this week, just it's his name constantly off the lips of whoever's calling the game. He's audacious. He's creative. He just makes things happen. He sprints around all over the field such that, people note he often doesn't play 90. He doesn't play 90 because he plays 100 miles an hour for 75 minutes. I don't think there's anyone like him in the Premier League in terms of their daring and craft and guile. He just makes people look silly. And I know it's a different league, but there are a lot of talented players in South America, and he's doing it against, the world's best under 23s playing over there right now, and doing the same thing in those games that he did for Boca. I'm not saying he's going to come right into our first team and be dominant, but what I will say is he will be exciting. He's going to get pushed to the floor constantly because he is a small guy, but he draws tons of fouls as it is. But versatility plus he can move all over the pitch. I think De Zerbi will try him at right wing because he is left-footed. He spent most of his time, although he's listed as a left back, playing more of a left midfield, left wing role. getting very advanced. He can drift inside. He started some games as a like 1 of 5 across the center mid on the inside. Really just a jack of all trades. Can do almost anything. And so, yeah, he's a little undersized, and that would be the drawback. But otherwise, he's a fierce competitor. He gets after it. He reminds me a lot of McAllister in terms of the spirit that he brings, and I think he'll bring as he ages up into the team. I could not be more excited. I don't know if that comes through in my voice and in my expression, but I'm ecstatic. I think we've landed a top, potentially world-class player. City was in for him, and I think with good reason. I think we're gonna be very excited. I know we felt like, we didn't bring in a proven talent. We didn't bring anybody who's ready now to play CDM, but we did get this kid who's going to make a difference, I think. And if not right away, certainly over the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's a really exciting talent. And thank you, Dagan, for sharing your expertise there, because I know you've watched him very keenly. Chloe, just really quickly before we do get on to the main event, as it were, how did you feel about how Brighton operated during the transfer window? A lot of sort of mixed emotions on Twitter, which I feel are very much polar opposites. Sort of, it was either, oh my goodness, we're doomed forever because we didn't bring in X, Y, and Z, or it's either don't complain, trust the club, continue on. Where were you at, Chloe, with how Brighton did in the transfer market?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I did think not bringing in sort of a ready replacement for Caicedo in the summer was a mistake, and I hoped that we'd rectify it in this window, and we didn't. I do think it's probably one of the reasons we concede so many goals. So I was a little bit disappointed. Obviously, Barco was a good signing. Completing that quite early on made me think that we, might do a bit more business. And some of the links got me quite excited. But we seem to be looking to sign players. But in the end, what really frustrated me was when they're like, it's not done yet. Brighton aren't done yet. And then it's some kid going out on loan. That just infuriates me. It's like, just feels like clickbait or something. But I do think, I'm not sure how I feel now. It's weird because it was only a few days ago, but sort of seeing the likes of Fati coming back. Obviously, Matoma, Japan got knocked out of the Asia Cup, so he'll be back. So we are getting players back. So I do think we can start to push on again now, because we've had a lot of players out for quite some time, which I think is probably one of the reasons it seemed like we needed more signings. But yeah, I still think we do miss someone in that DM role, but unfortunately we just didn't sign anyone.
No, I mean, I think you're spot on, Chloe. I think I very much felt like yourself that in the summer we let our double pivot go for good money, very good money, but we didn't necessarily replace them. But that has meant that someone like Billy Gilmore has come into the foray and he's performed admirably. But I still feel like we're missing a fantastic ball-winning midfielder. Some people will point to Baleba and say, that's going to be him. That well may be the case, but I'm yet to be convinced that he's ready to start week in, week out. I would like to see more of him, that's for sure. I don't want to prolong the point of the January transfer window, but I do feel like perhaps some of the more negative responses were probably on the back of the Luton loss, which might have been different if we'd beaten Luton or got a draw. And I wonder where everyone's mojo would have been if perhaps we didn't beat Palace in regards to the transfer window, because obviously, as we say, football can change how we view things. So if we lost against Palace or drew against Palace, I'm sure the transfer window would still be at the tip of everyone's tongue. For what it's worth, as I say, central defensive midfielder, still want one of those, please. Tony Bloom in the summer. Aaron, I'm going to come to you next, my brother. Before we kicked a ball, you weren't feeling very confident. Is that because, Aaron, of just the fixture with Palace and just sort of the emotions behind that, or was it more to do with the form that we've been in? We hadn't scored a goal in January in the league, which was obviously not great. We'd come off the back of some clean sheets, but not scoring goals. So where was that sort of that outlook coming from? Was that more to do with the fixture of it being Palace, or our run of form, or a bit of both?
Expect the worst, hope for the best is what I've learned over many, many years. This fixture, doesn't matter if you're playing well or not, we don't really seem to turn up for this fixture for some unknown reason. I'm not really too sure why. And to be negative about it is just a comfort blanket for me. So when it does fucking go wrong, it's not so bad because I've already mentally prepared myself for it. So I mean, it didn't happen that way, so that's always a bonus. But that's the way I've always been, always will be as well. Especially when it comes to this fixture. Never, every time I think, well, we're going to go and absolutely batter them, we'll end up losing. And when we, I've had that twice already this year. West Ham, I thought we're going to get a record against them. We lose. I mean, that's the first one I've seen this year in the league, this season. So, I mean, that says a lot about my record this year. Hence why I'm always so negative.
I think, Chloe, you said it perfectly well. We've played Palace a lot over the recent seasons, and we have outplayed them convincingly so. And we haven't always got our just rewards for that. I think the last big win against Palace that I can remember was probably the St. Valentine's Day massacre, with David Lopez, Andrea Orlandi. So we're talking a long time ago. I know we've beaten them since then, but I suppose when we beat them with 10 men, I suppose, actually. So take that back. But, it's been a while since we've given them a really good rubbing. So it was nice to get 4 goals at the weekend. So let's dive into it. Let's give the people what they want, because that's what we are about at the Albion Obsessed podcast. Let's talk about the starting 11 just really quickly, because I want to talk about the people that he brought in, De Zerbi, I mean. Bart Verbruggen for Jason Steele, who had a bit of a mare against Luton, I think it's fair to say. Tariq Lamptey, first appearance for quite a while. We'll talk a lot about him in just a moment. Our boy Jackie Hinchelwood, where's the shirt? There's the shirt. There it is. Respect Jack Hinchelwood. Hinchelwood coming in, and Ferguson as well. So, Joe, let's talk. I know you probably want to talk about Jack Hinchelwood, and I don't blame you, but I'm going to actually ask you about Bart Verbruggen. Came in for Jason Steele, who didn't perform to the best against Luton. We've seen a lot of rotation of goalkeepers this season, Joseph. It's been one of the many talking points of this season. You've seen both goalkeepers a fair amount of times. Who do you prefer in nets, Steely or Bart?
I still don't know. Is that a fair comment? I don't like, because they've both got howlers in them, and they've both got really good performances in them. Like Bart yesterday was fantastic when called upon. He could have easily switched off. His mind could have wandered. So, how many shots did Palace have? Not many. Could he have done better for the near post header? But it was a really good header, I thought. So I don't know. I think Bart, and I say Bart because of the ceiling. I think he could be Netherlands' #1 goalkeeper in the next few years. I like the way he conducts himself. I like his professionalism. He could easily come in and demanded to play every Premier League game for the fee we bought him in for. He's got the #1 shirt. But he's conducting himself really well. And he's got that mentality that he's a team player. And I really think he could go far. So yeah, for me, it would be Bart Verbruggen if I had to pick a #1 now.
I think that's very fair. I mean, Aaron, I've got to ask you the same question, just purely because you are our resident goalkeeper expert. Steely or Bart?
I'm sort of along the same lines as Joe at the moment. They've both got a howler in them. I mean, the reason why we concede lots of goals is because we keep chopping and changing. There's your first issue. Because I've said this time and time again. I mean, the club I coach, we're currently going for the exact same thing at the moment, where we're chopping and changing keepers. and it's got to a point now where we have to make a decision, but it's hard to because of availability. Where this is similar to the fact is they've got mistakes and they've got world-class performances in them, but which one's doing it on a less frequent level of making the howlers? And that's where the decision needs to be looked at. But for me, similar to Joe, probably Bart, I would say. I think still this year is probably creeping back into how everyone used to see him before he came to Brighton. He's making too many silly mistakes at the moment, and costly ones at that.
I think that is fair, and I think I think Bart Verbrugge probably deserves maybe a run of games now. So I think, as you say, Aaron, neither keeper is going to gain any consistency if they keep getting chopped and changed. I mean, Arteta was doing the similar thing at Arsenal at the beginning of the season. He quickly stopped because it wasn't working. I wonder how long it'll be before it does stop. Dagan, a man that we've sort of longed to return. I've joked in the group chat, the Albion Obsessed group chat, whenever someone mentions him, I say, who? And that is Tariq Lamptey, the lesser spotted Tariq Lamptey. We will get onto his performance, and because what a performance it was, but just how fantastic was it to see his name back in the starting 11. He's a player that a type of player that we've missed sorely over the last few weeks, with pace, directness, and I know at the moment we're very short on wingers. So how good was it to see someone with that sort of rapid pace in the starting 11?
Well, I think it's a difference maker, period. If you don't have to outright double him like Matoma, you at least have to give another set of eyeballs to him for fear of him blowing by someone at any moment. He doesn't bring quite the finishing edge, but he used his pace, got around the end, and played a lovely little cross in. And that's all it takes, right? That's what you need from those outside players. We have not had a player on the outside for some weeks now who could do that at all. Which, unless we swing João Pedro out, which means he's not central. So, no, I mean, I think it's an emotional lift. I think for the crowd, Lamptey strikes me as someone who is beloved, just despite the bemoaning of his, constantly being out of the lineup. But when people see him, their hearts are warmed. And so I think that gave a boost to the crowd. And then, of course, him being electric and him being rapid, as you said, going up and down the sideline. Just, I think it's good for morale. And certainly a problem for the defense to have to account for. It's funny because you're thinking of, I know, Tom, you would say he's not really a right back. And in fact, we've seen him do some of his best work this year on the left, where he can cut in. But yeah, a huge addition. Hope he can stay healthy. There's always that caveat.
I think that's the main thing with Lamptey. He can be ridiculously exciting, and I think he's such a fantastic little player. But it's just, I mean, even after yesterday, I'm just thinking, how long have we got him for? We got him for another game, 2 games, week, 2 weeks. You just never know with Tariq Lamptey. I just really, really, really hope he stays fit. But hey ho. Chloe, another man coming back from injury was Ansu Fati, who made the bench. We've missed his quality. We've missed his ability. Was it good to see his name on the bench? And like Dagan says, weeks without playing wingers, and then suddenly we've got one on the bench. We're starting with Tariq Lamptey, who can play wing back as a winger as well. Just gives us another dimension to our attack.
Yeah, it was really good to see him on the bench. And to be honest, it's nice to sort of see some of our injured players starting to come back, because we've been missing them so badly. No goals in the league in January. And I think that's probably some of the reason why. So, yeah, it was very nice to see him on the bench and actually get on the pitch. So, yeah.
Certainly was. Hello, everyone who is chatting away in the live chat there. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Please do keep your comments coming in. I know that Dagan is doing his best to address all of you, and if I don't shout you out, I do apologize. Tom is saying here, it's better than having Milner making runs on the outside. Ain't that the truth? Although I must admit, when we did play Milner, was it at left wing a couple of weeks ago? He looked pretty decent actually. But that was a one-off, I'm sure. So yeah, keep the comments coming in, guys. Thank you ever so much for joining us on this live one. And as we chat, please keep dropping them. Dan says about the Bart and Jason debate. If both Bart and Jason were given a few more games in a row each to see who was doing better, then we could see who's the better keeper. But can we honestly say one is better than the other? Yeah, Dan, I get what you mean. You know, without that stretch of games together, you know, can we make that call just yet? Andrew, welcome, Andrew. 4 brilliant goals. To witness this game live was spectacular. We never gave Palace any room to play. Totally dominated most of the game, apart from giving them a goal. Pedro goal was total class. It certainly was, and that's going to be a fun one to talk about. Posy Pos, how on earth is De Zerbi going to pick a starting 11 when all are fit and ready to play? That's something we can talk about a bit later. And Tom, again, the shot against Spurs on the left when it hit the post was his best moment here yet. Yes, Tom, you are correct. So, Joe, you're sat in the stands. You've just got to your seat in the north. The whistle's gone for kickoff. Tariq Lamptey makes a very early run down the left, giving us everything that we've been missing for the past X amount of weeks. We get a corner, all made by Tariq Lamptey. Lovely corner in. They're in the little love train. Dunk peels off. Header. Goal. 2 minutes in. What a way to start. Joe, I mean, it was amazing watching it on my little tiny phone screen. It must have been ridiculous live in the stands to score that early. What was your emotions within that first 2 minutes?
Yeah, I didn't just lag. I just have no words. Lewis Dunk finally scoring against Palace. I believe that's his first goal against Palace, if I'm not mistaken. So, just incredible. Like, that is exactly what's needed. You know, after such a disappointing result against Luton, and we've spoken so much about the bounce back ability of this team. It's us define. We define that word. The way that we bounce back after a stupid 5-1 loss to Everton, a stupid 6-1 loss to Villa. We go on some runs and we get some form, and it's just so good to see that we have that within us to start a game as we intend to go on, and just from that moment, from Dunky scoring, just complete control of the game. And yeah, to see Lewis Dunk peel away in front of the Palace fans. But my favourite moment that's come from the Lewis Dunk goal is the Jan-Paul Van Hecke picture of him. Supposedly, I don't think he is, but it looks like he's screaming in Van Aanholt's face. And it is the greatest Brighton & Hove Albion picture I've ever seen in my life. And I was laughing about it for hours last night. It's just brilliant. But great way to start the game.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular. Joanna saying, I really hope we get to see more of Tariq Lamptey. We sit in the East Lower stand and was great to see him making runs and causing some bother. Yeah, he certainly did that quite a lot. Aaron, you know, Lamptey's positioning throughout that first half, he was so high up. I mean, on the official like BBC website and all that sort of stuff, it had us playing like in a back three with Lamptey and Hinch being wing backs. But you were saying in the ground, it looked Tariq was just so high up. It was more like he was playing as an out and out winger.
Yeah, it was more of a 4. Hinch would staying right back, but playing quite high up. And Igor was just hanging around left back. I mean, yeah, it was, like you said, it's good to have him back, but need to keep him fit. That's going to be the real issue. But yeah, it's probably his best performance for a while. But like you said, how long we're going to have him for is the whole different question.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now I'm gonna ask a question, and anyone can chime in. Dunk scoring that first that goal there. How many hours do you reckon it was between our last league goal and Dunk's goal?
Too fucking many.
No, I want a number, Joseph. I want a number in hours, please.
Go on, Dagon's stat man. Dagon should know this.
We can drop it in the comments if you like.
Yeah. To fill the silence, I'll just sing a song. Selhurst Park.
It's over
is
4, isn't it?
now. Oh, okay,
It
sorry.
is not
Between
massive.
4 and 5.
Yeah, it's 4 hours 48 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
So it was almost 5 hours of Premier League football without a goal. That's almost Potter-esque, dare I say. Manipulated stat. But no, we turned up approximately 182 years from Spade. It certainly felt like that, didn't it? But yeah, an absolutely perfect start. And Dagan, I mean, pretty much almost straight away, we had a chance for a second. A lovely cross from João Pedro from the left. And I thought it was Gross, but it wasn't. It was Buonanote's lovely little header. But it was straight at Henderson in the end. But the impetus was there, an impetus, Dagan, that we have been missing for a very long time.
Yeah, well, getting punched in the mouth will do that to you. And yeah, I'm going to say Luton, it feels bad to lose 0-4. Luton, I think, has only lost once in their past 9 in all comps. So it's no accident that they showed up at home and played well. When you get scored on early, it's tough. When you score early, everything is a lot easier. And I think once we got that first goal, it just changed the entire environment in the stadium. I mean, imagine what it's like, right? Imagine what it's like in that building, given the transfer window, given the loss at Luton, if we're going into that 30th minute and no one scored and it's 0-0. Because without that early dunk goal, that's exactly where we sit. So a game of inches, right? I mean, if his head doesn't connect, it's an entirely different game. It's an entirely different mood. It's an entirely different, who knows what after this. So yeah, everything was clicking. We had that momentum, and the crowd's driving us. Everybody was locked in, I think, from that moment on. And it felt like we could have scored 6 or 7, but just couldn't get on the end of chances.
Yeah, it was one of those halves of football that after that first goal, I felt like we needed a couple of more to be comfortable. And Chloe, we got what we wanted. Let's talk about that second goal then, because I mean, the creme de la creme, 2 local lads scoring against that lot up the road is a fantastic feeling. But the ball comes out to Lamptey after being a bit pinged around in the box. He's given way too much time and space. You can't do that against Tariq Lamptey. And he puts in a lovely ball, and Hinch is there at the back post, and he nods it in. As I say, another Sussex lad scoring. He has been, Jack Hinchelwood, an absolute revelation since coming into the squad. And, we talk about the injuries and we talk about how crap that is and how rubbish that is. But I think the silver lining to all that is we're getting to see players like Jack Hinchelwood come into the squad and, really take their chance. I mean, he's a central defensive midfielder who's playing as a right back, and he is scoring goals in the Premier League at his age. It is absolutely ridiculous, Chloe.
Yeah, I think he's a great young talent. And yeah, I was saying earlier, if we didn't have all these players out, we wouldn't have seen these players that have stepped up, like Hinchelwood, like Buonanotte even, and they just really have stepped up. And it was great to see, obviously, a local lad get a second goal for us, and we were winning 2-0 against Palace, and it was just so brilliant. And yeah, great header, great ball in from Lamptey. I so hope he stays fit, because he's such a asset to the club when he plays and when he's fit. So yeah, he's got a good head on him, Hinchelwood. I mean that in he's good at headers, not he's got a good head, but he also does have a good head, I believe.
I think you're right. He's a smart young lad. But yeah, that's the second header he scored, because I think it was against Brentford. He scored the header there as well. But yeah, what a fantastic young talent. I mean, going from scoring against Palace and the under-18s to the Premier League in like the matter of a calendar year is absolutely bonkers. And the lad has really stepped up. He's one of our own. He's a Sussex lad. He is what do they call it? He's a legacy. The Hinchelwood name is synonymous with Brighton & Hove Albion and also Crystal Palace, believe it or not. So yeah, what an incredible first half it was for the two Sussex lads. But Joe, Blinken, you'll miss it, because a player that Chloe just mentioned, who has also really taken his opportunity with the injuries, Facundo Buonanotte. But before we talk about his goal, Joe, I want to talk about De Kaiser. I want to talk about Pascal Gross. Pascal Gross, at the start of the season, I was quite negative about Pascal Gross's inclusion in the side. And I still feel to a certain extent, rightly so, because I still don't think he's a right back. However, that his game yesterday was near flawless. The way he skipped through that defense, the Brighton high press, wins the ball back, skips through their defense, lays it off to Buonanotte. Lovely. Talk to me, Joe, about De Kaiser. Are you just use your words?
Tom, you keep asking me questions that I simply do not have words for. How do you describe how good Pascal Gross is and has been for our football club? I think he really is one of the greatest, if not the greatest footballer I've ever seen play for this football club. He is technically superb. His head is in the right place. He's stayed professional in that little lull that he had with Graham Potter, where he was out of the team. He stayed with the club, and now he is and has been for a long time our biggest chance creator. And to put Anderson on his ass like that, I thought it was just to address any Crystal Palace fans that are watching, if there are any watching. I thought it was only Lewis Dunk that gets put on his ass. No, the only centre back in the league. Anderson, I've heard, is still digging his way out of the Amex ground. So it was delightful to see, and who else to get you an assist as Pascal Gross? What a guy! And long may it continue.
Yeah, he's he's getting on in years. He has indicated that he might like to go back to Germany. Not ready for that quite yet. So Pascal, please give us a bit more of your time. Aaron, we talk about the second goal, fantastic finish from Facundo Buonanotte. He's another young lad that's really stepped up in the absence of some of the regular first team starters. He's been in at right midfield for Solly March. He's played in the centre, and in the absence of Julio and Ciso and Fati. He's scored quite a few goals in the last month or so. I say month or so. Yeah, he's been performing really well, and it was just a lovely finish. And he's really coming into his own.
Yeah, no, he is. I think he's finally started to settle and find a place in the team, and I think his performances have shown that. And it's a credit to De Zerbi to keeping him in where others probably would have dropped him, or sent him out on loan or whatever. But no, he's done really well. The finish was class. Like you said, it was all really done by Gross, really, the hard work. But I did see on Twitter people saying it's very similar to like a Messi sort of finish. Just opened his body up, left foot, top bins. Like it's a very much Messi finish, but it was a quality player. Starting to get into his own now, and a great finish, and well deserved, may I add.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, I'm going to come back to you on this one, Joe, because I think it'd be fair to say that, Joe, in the past, you've been quite critical of Facundo Buonanotte. I remember distinctly last season. I'm not saying you, but he got absolutely slated. I think we were losing a game. He came on quite late, and he was just walking around, and it was just that utter frustration of this young lad, sort of just not really caring. But that's a far cry from the Facundo Buonanotte that we're seeing now. Do you put that down to just getting more experience, or is it him playing more centrally, which is perhaps his better position? What do you put it down to?
It's De Zerbi drilling into him that longing for perfection, which obviously never comes in football. No one's perfect, except for Lionel Messi, maybe. But it's just, I think to sum it up the best is you can see on his face when he scored that goal, he finally gets it. I think he finally gets that he can be that young superstar as well as Enciso, as well as Hinshelwood, as well as anyone else that comes through, because he's got the ability. The ability's always been there. And yes, you're rightly pointing out that he's playing more centrally now. I think he's been given a task by De Zerbi, a role by De Zerbi that he can really take ownership of. And he does it to perfection. I am really sorry to the listeners, by the way, because my voice from yesterday is absolutely fucked. So, yeah, there you go. But yeah, I think that the perfect way to sum up, Tom, the journey that Bruno Nate's been on, just look at his celebration. He really gets it now.
Here's a good question from Jason. Does he make a start when full squad is back? I hope he does, but will be understandable if he feel he is ahead of his time in our team. I think it's one of those things where I would say that when Veltman comes back, Hinshelwood still starts because Hinshelwood has earned that spot. And I think if Facundo Buonanotte keeps playing well, it should be his spot to lose. I don't think Enciso should come straight back into it, and he probably won't do if we're managing his minutes well. Same with Fati. I would even imagine that when Matoma comes back, we'll manage his return, and the same with Simone Adingra. But I would say I always think that places should be won on merit, not just because of the name on the back of your shirt. So we'll have to wait and see. It's a good point to make. Dagan, what do you think? Does Buonanotte keep his place in the squad when everyone is back fully fit?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? I think the big question is who plays on the right. That for me is the real question, because I think that dictates everything else that happens. We can reasonably expect Matoma is going to have his spot on the left. One of João Pedro, Ferguson, Welbeck will start pretty much every game at the 9. If it's Ferguson or Welbeck with João Pedro, he often operates centrally, and then you've got someone else on the right. Could that be Facundo moving back out, where we've seen him not as strong? I think that's possible if we're trying to just, again, squeeze him into the team. But if Adingra comes back and he's ready, perhaps he takes that spot back. There's going to be a real question of who those guys are. Haven't even mentioned Ansu Fati, who could very easily start in one or more of those spots. So yeah, a tough problem, and we'll probably pick it apart. I don't think you'd say he'd be wrong to keep the spot. I don't think it'd be wrong for him to lose it. He hasn't been so spectacular that you couldn't say other guys couldn't do just as well. I think De Zerbi may ride the hot hand, whoever that is, but that's a benefit of having this level of depth. And I know we critique and feel like we don't have the depth of some teams, but we have a lot of depth in attack. Just wish we had a left-footed right winger. It'd be interesting to see if Barco fills that role, and if he gets some opportunity there too, because Facundo, could fill that role, but hasn't looked his best there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think when he is back, I think Adingra will probably take that right spot. We've seen him play out there already, and he's scored from that position a couple of times now as well. I initially was a bit sort of, but at USG, he played as a left winger because he likes to cut in, but actually he's performed quite well out there on the right. So we go into the half, it's 3-0 up, and Michael Elise comes on and then goes off. So that was nice, Chloe. I mean, Elise out, Eze out. What's his face? He went off injured in the first half. So in terms of that was pretty good for us, not having to deal with those three. Was it almost comical seeing Elise come onto the pitch and then leave minutes later?
Oh yeah, I can't lie. When he came on, I was a bit like, he's quite a good player, I don't like to say that about a Palace player, but he is a decent player. And even though we were 3-0 up, you never know. But when he went off, it was just like, why the hell did you bring him on if he's not fit? Like, it's hilarious because it's Palace, but it's like such a weird decision, I think. So yeah, and it was good to see, because obviously he's not the sort of player you want playing against you.
Definitely so. And the chants ringing around the Amex were very good, aimed at Roy Hodgson. Very good. Well done to all of those of you who were in attendance. I just want to come back to this comment from, who was it? I think it was Lewis. Does Webster go in the summer? Yes.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Aaron, very quick with the yes there. Yeah, I think he has to go, Lewis, if I'm being brutally honest. I think he plays well in a back three. In a back two, I think he's always got a clanger in him. Quite injury prone. I like the lad. He's he seems like a genuinely nice guy. But I think with the emergence of Jan-Paul van Hecker and Igor as well, who we've seen play, across in a back three as well, or as a left back, I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for him to get into the starting 11. And you just never know what talents we're going to bring up through our youth system that could take that spot. So I think Webster has been a great servant to the club. But yeah, I think I can't imagine he'll stay much longer. Maybe another season, perhaps. But if his playtime is increasingly decreased, then he'll probably want to move on himself anyway. Joe, it wasn't to be a perfect afternoon, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here. But we did give away a cheap goal. Brighton, perhaps in the second half, took their foot off the gas, perhaps expected. Having a lovely time playing Palace off the park. But it got a bit sloppy. We gave the ball away. Palace put in a cross. No one was particularly marking Mateta. It was a very good header, to be fair to him. But were we a bit guilty of taking it too easy in the second half?
It was at that moment, Tom, that I started to really shit myself. When Brighton and Hove Albion are 3-0 up, it's not comfortable. The only time I asked the guy in front of me if I could relax was when it went 4-1 up. And yeah, Palace getting a goal back, and then they'd had a little bit of a spring in their step after that as well. And you're thinking it, as you said in the group chat, Tom, if they get the second goal, it's going to be backs to the wall. Aaron is laughing. He's seen it before. So yeah, it was really scary. But I thought we managed the rather weak-ish wave from Palace quite well, and gained control back with some really good substitutions, and it just swung the game back in our favour.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was one moment that was a bit hairy. I think it was Edouard when he came on. He had a shot, and I think a better striker would have punished us from memory. But yeah, I felt the same, Joe. Aaron, did you feel that? They get a goal back. I mean, a slight resurgence, a slight spring in their step. Were you worried, or did you think that the job had realistically been done by that point?
I mean, you're always worried with a 2-goal lead anyway, regardless of which team you're playing against. And I did say at half time to my work CEO, he was there in one of the boxes, and I said to him, "We'll find a way to fuck this up if we do." Like, it's a very much Brighton thing. And as soon as we conceded, he messaged me, was like, "Okay, maybe you were right." And I was like, "Give it time." And then I think we sort of woke up a little bit, and then they'd done nothing after that. To be fair, they didn't really do anything all game. They just shit, aren't they, really? Let's be honest.
They are pretty crap, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think I stood with Joe and Dan before the game when the teams got announced. And I read through their team, and I'm thinking, Jesus, this are awful. Like, there is no one I'm worried about in this team at all. Like, no one. And even Elise on the bench, he has hamstrings like cheese strings, so there was no way he was going to come on. And when he came on and he came straight off, it was just incredible. And at that point, it was they were done at that point. And yeah, if I was a Palace fan, I've left when we were 3-0 down at Selhurst Park. So I know how they feel on that one. So yeah.
Fairs, yeah, they did start leaving in their droves about half time. I just want to come to this point, Lewis. Do you think João Pedro will break the Brighton Premier League goal scoring record? I think Lewis, he's got a chance to do it if he stays around long enough. I think with how he's performing this season, I think it's not unrealistic to think that in the summer he may have some other teams sniffing around him. You can guarantee one of them will be Chelsea, who will probably put in a bid for £200 billion. But hopefully Pedro is got his head screwed on straight and will go, hang on, that's a stupid idea. Chelsea are shit. So Posy, yeah, them lot, we're never going to get back into the game. I could have played the last 10 minutes and we'd still have won 4-1. Yeah, they were really poor. But then when you play Jeffrey Schlupp up front, what do you expect? Dagan, the sense that you're eager to say something.
Well, I was going to say the commentary here remarked on the change of sound in the stadium, that there was a real unease that was palpable after that goal went in, which in a game that it seemed like we hadn't, comfortably in hand, I would say it was not that dissimilar to what it sounded like when Tottenham scored and made it 4-1 and then scored right again and made it 4-2. And just seemed like, oh my gosh, are the wheels going to come off? And I was fearful that it was going to turn into that, where we just sort of had to survive the rest of the way. But you'll lead us to how things turned on its head. Things turned on its head with quite a lovely little run of play.
Oh, it was lovely, wasn't it? Chloe, let's talk about our fourth goal. Lovely interplay. Jean-Paul Van Hecke to João Pedro down our right, who combined brilliantly with Welbeck, who delivered a beautiful back flick. João Pedro runs into space and he slots home his 19th goal of the season. Absolutely sublime interplay, absolutely sublime finish with the outside of his foot. I bet the stands were absolutely bouncing.
Yeah, it was just brilliant. I loved his celebration. Didn't see it at the time, but all the clips after, it's just brilliant, isn't it? I absolutely love João Pedro. He's such a good player. He's sort of got lots of good qualities other than just putting the ball in the back of the net. And yeah, it was just great to get that 4, because then it's like, oh, phew, we're definitely going to win this now. That's what it sort of felt like to me. And yeah, it was a great understanding between him and Welbeck for that move. Nice little 1-2 that, yeah, it was great to see, and great goal. Yeah, and all 4 goals, I think, were good goals, which is really nice to see.
Definitely. I mean, that fourth goal, just because of the interplay and perhaps maybe a bit about who it was against. Anyone think that might be a goal of the season contender for, because it was a cheeky little back heel against Palace. You got to love that sort of play. I'm sure we'll have some, long range screamers in there as well. But no, the game ended relatively comfortably 4-1. But just before the final whistle blew, it was the return of Fati. And Joe, he almost scored. Almost. Not too far away at all. What a return that would have been.
It would have been a great return. There were too many people in front of me to see whether or not he managed to get a touch on it, but obviously just watched the highlights after, and he was very, very close. I don't know what Pascal was doing. Was he shooting? I think he was shooting. The ferocity of it came off his boot. Definitely looked like a shot anyway. Yeah, it's great to have a winger back. And we're going to have more wingers back very soon. And I think that's probably been played a part in us losing our form a little bit. Obviously not scoring in almost 5 hours of Premier League football. And yeah, it's clear to see that a different dynamic is given to us when we do have wide, quick players. And Ansu Fati wasn't on for long, but I thought he looked a handful and he looked ready. So long may that continue, and let's hope that we see more of him at Spurs.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Joe. Wingers are so important to the way we play, because our strikers, drop deep and wingers go high and wide. It's just.
Can I also give a shout out to not you, Tom, but Tom in the chat, Tommy, who sits in front of us. He filmed the celebrations and the goal that we put on our Instagram yesterday, and it was great footage. So well done, mate. And yeah, it was good to celebrate that with you.
Good skills and good name as well, my friend. Very good name. So game ends 4-1. We thump the Palace. And Aaron, I would like to now for you to tell me who was your player of the match. I bet there was a few that were up in contention.
Probably Pedro for me. I think his work rate that's probably the best I've actually seen him play, I think. To be honest with you, I thought he was absolute quality and he deserved that goal. There was a couple who could have been nominated, but yeah, no, Pedro for me. And one thing I will mention, the actual atmosphere was probably the best it's been for a while, and the limbs was unreal. Like, it was madness. Like, it was the first proper time there's been limbs. I'm like, yeah, this is actually fun. Like, this is just people just falling over me. It was a mess. It was great. Like,
It might have been fun for you, Aaron. I got punched in the face by my mother.
I would have happily got beaten the shit out of when we scored. I don't care. But yeah, it was unreal. Like, we had a bunch of lads around us who I've not seen before, but they're such a great laugh. And yeah, it was absolute carnage. Absolute carnage. Loved it.
Yeah, and that's what football should be about. I bet the limbs between the second and the third goal just felt like an extended sort of
unmatched. Crazy. It reminded me very similar to Fulham in the Championship, where Duncan Knockhart scored, and it was one after the other. That's what it felt like. It was crazy,
incredible. I hadn't even finished celebrating the second goal. It's ridiculous. I look up and then suddenly Facundo Buonanotte putting it back in the net. Like, incredible.
Very good. Dagan, who's your player of the match, please?
Oh man, so many worthy folks. João Pedro was all over the place, as others have said. So I imagine, again, without that first goal, them getting their goal and it being 2-1 instead of 3-1, and how different the game is. Given how many good performances there were, I just lean towards the thing that happened first, because I think it changed everything after that. I think the fans were how they were because Dunk scored, a couple of minutes into the game. It's Lewis Dunk for me. He's our rock. He's our mountain. He's not perfect, but he's ours. And I think he deserves it of anyone in a game where you could give it to almost everyone.
Yeah, he certainly is the wind beneath our wings. Chloe, who was your player of the match?
I'm going to agree with Aaron. I'm going for João Pedro as well.
Fair is fair. Joseph Sayers, man of the match, please.
I'm going to give a little bit of a left field shout because I want to be different. I'm going to go, just for his goal alone, Facundo Buonanotte. Because I've slated that boy a bit too much, and I apologise. I almost feel like it's full screen apology worthy, but I'm not 100% sure yet. A little bit more consistency maybe, and then we'll do it on the next episode. But yeah, just for sticking it out and being a really good professional and scoring against the scum.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I think you've all sort of alluded to it. There were so many good performances across the pitch. I thought Igor looked very good. Buonanotte, very good. Pascal Gross, very, very good. Again, I'm going to give it to someone who's maybe not left field, but I'm going to give it to Lamptey. Just because, if it wasn't for him, that corner for the first goal never happens. Lovely cross for the second goal. And it was just so refreshing to see him running at Palace players. It was like Lamptey of old. And I truly, genuinely hope, all joking aside of who? Tariq Lamptey? Who? All joking aside, I really hope he can string some games together. Because he's just so electric, and he just gave us a dynamic that we've been missing for so long. So yeah, I'm gonna give it out to Lamptey, who might not have been as stellar as as Dunk or Gross, but or Pedro. But I'm gonna give it to him as a pure sort of like, I see you, my guy. You did good. You did good. So there you go. 4-1. Lovely jubbly. We talk about the roller coaster of this week, from 4-0 down against Luton to 4-1 against Crystal Palace. Football's a funny old game, and 1 week is a long time in football. So let's look ahead then to our next game, which is going to be a tough one. Tottenham Hotspur. They've just come off of a draw, I believe, against Everton, who we play also relatively soon. Joe, Spurs, difficult team to beat. Ange Postecoglou has got them playing some pretty good football. They do look susceptible, though. They are beatable. We have done it ourselves. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, and I think what you've seen in recent games is that they're quite easy to rattle as well, quite easy to anger. If we can do that, get their crowd onto their back, hit them early, hopefully. I'm sure De Zerbi's not going to let the levels drop. I think this Palace game is a huge turning point for our season. As we know, I was rock bottom when we lost to Luton, but I really do believe that these players coming back are really going to fire us up a little bit and hopefully fire us up the league as well. And obviously Europa League coming back as well. So lots of good things to look forward to for us to sort of put that energy into these performances and get some points on the board. I wouldn't be too disappointed with a draw, but I really want revenge at their place for last season, really badly.
Yes, last season, that was one of the very few times that we've done an immediate post-match, like within the hour post-match analysis, because of just how god-awful that was. Aaron, all joking aside with Spurs, Richarlison is looking pretty handy at the minute. How do you see the game against Spurs at their place going?
It'd be a difficult one. They are pretty good at home, but like Joe said, they're easily rattled. It all depends on what Brighton turn up, really, and it also depends what Tottenham turn up. If Tottenham want to play their normal way, it'll be a very, very difficult game. If they sort of roll over like they did on a Saturday afternoon against Everton, then it's anyone's guess. It's the opportunity there to get back-to-back wins, but it all depends on what teams turn out.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I mean, we've seen two polar opposites of Brighton Hove Albion this week. And they said, I think it was on Match of the Day, you just never know what Brighton you're going to get. And I think that's sort of that's
sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Yeah, but that's what happened this time last year. We were getting a lot of games very close together. We'd be a brilliant one game, and then the next game we'd be all over the shop. So let's hope we don't get a repeat of that. We can string some consistency. Dagan, Spurs. I know you're not the biggest fan of the Spurs. How do you see it going?
Should be missing Son as he's still in the Asian Cup. We got him 4-2 at our place. Van de Ven's back. I'm going to go with 2-3 in our favor.
Yeah, I think I can't see it being a 0-0. As Lewis has said in the comments, I can't see it being 0-0. Let's hope that we can continue our scoring run after a completely barren January. Chloe, finally, same thing to you. How do you see the game against Spurs going?
Yeah, hopefully we can get a bit of revenge, because that game last season was it just felt like a robbery, really. And it would be really nice to win at their place. I'm going to go with 2-1. I do think there will be goals in that game because it's us and we do score and we do concede. I think that's the one thing about Brighton you can generally rely on. But yeah, hopefully it'll be a good game.
Yeah, I think as long as we bring our scoring boots with us, or our shooting boots, I should say, we should hopefully be able to hold our ground and get the win. I think I'm gonna be boring and copy you, Dagan, 3-2. I think it'll be a potential goal fest. We'll just have to hope that we can get one up on them, especially after the travesty that was last year. God, that made me angry. But no, thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on this live stream. It has been absolutely fantastic being back with the Albion Obsessed. Sorry for our absence, but no, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Aaron would like to say something. Say some words, Aaron.
You boys up the road took one hell of a beating. Go back to your caravans. Go on. Toodaloo. Toodaloo. Your home has a handbrake. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
What he said was that there are teachers and there are pupils. Know your
damn fucking place. Good night, everybody.
If you're not sure, maybe you just check the league table and you can see your place. No, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. Fantastic to be back. If you are watching this later on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to check out One Klopp Shop because we've still got our affiliation with them. And if you enter the code Albion Obsessed, you will get 10 whole percentages off your order. So if you're into your awesome football shirts, just like that one that's behind Dagan there, you can grab 10% off your order using Albion Obsessed as a code. You might not get that one that Joe is showing you, though. We don't want to be done for false advertising. The only thing that's left for me to say, guys, is once again, thank you. And wherever you may be, whenever you may be, we will see you next time. Take care.